I moved into an old house, thinking it was a fresh start. But every night, the walls whispered damned. I kept finding pieces of someone who never left. The house was older than it looked in the listing photos. Online, it had seemed charming, almost quainter two-story fixer-upper with character as the ad described it. But standing in front of it with suitcase in hand, I saw the truth. The paint peeled in long curls that fluttered in the breeze. The shutters sagged off-kilter, and the porch steps dipped under their own weight. The house wasn't alive, but it seemed to breathe. Each board swelling and shrinking with a rhythm that didn't belong to the wind. Still, it was mine now. Or rather, the bank's. After months of bouncing between couch cushions, I had convinced myself that any place I could lock a door behind me would feel like safety. That optimism lasted about 5 seconds after crossing the threshold. The air inside was wrong. Not dusty, not moldy, but stale like air trapped in a sealed jar, untouched for decades. I coughed into my sleeve, and the echo chased itself through the narrow hallway, bouncing back louder than it should have. "Home sweet home," I muttered. The house whispered it back. I know it sounds insane, but I swear I heard it, just a fraction too late, from a fraction too far away. The floorboards whined under my steps as I moved from room to room. The living room was lined with faded wallpaper layered so thickly that decades of patterns overlapped. Floral prints on top of stripes, on top of something darker beneath. The seams had peeled in strips, revealing slivers of forgotten designs. It looked like the house had worn too many skins, unable to shed any of them. The radiator in the corner leaked a faint red stain down the wall. Rust, I told myself, just rust. But the streaks were too fresh. To wet dot in the kitchen, the cabinets were warped, some hanging off their hinges. I opened one and found jars stacked neatly, their labels long gone, their contents clouded into shapes I couldn't identify. Something floated near the surface of one jar, pale and circular, like an eye staring through murky water. I shut the door before it could move. The refrigerator was unplugged, but when I pulled the handle, it resisted as though suctioned from within. A faint smell escaped, not rotten exactly, but sweet and metallic, the kind of scent that makes you gag because your body knows it shouldn't be pleasant. The bulb inside was dead. In the gloom, I thought I saw frost creeping along the back wall, even though it hadn't been cold in years. I didn't linger. Upstairs, the staircase was narrow and steep, the banister polished to a slick shine from countless hands that weren't mine. I avoided touching it. Each step moaned beneath me, the sound sinking into the plaster walls. The master bedroom door was ajar, though I remembered closing it when the realtor had shown me the place. The air inside was heavier, thicker, like walking into water. The room was mostly beige, just a stripped bed frame and a dresser left behind. The walls bulged in places where the plaster had bubbled, almost like veins pressing outward. I set my bag down and went to check the dresser. One drawer stuck out slightly, crooked, like a mouth frozen mid-breath. I tugged it open. The wood shrieked. At first I thought it was chalk inside, a stub of pale white, brittle with age. But the curve was unmistakable. The nail at the end, cracked and yellow, sealed it. A finger human. I dropped it instantly. It rolled across the warped floorboards, tapping each groove as though marking the rhythm of a countdown, then stopped, perfectly straight. Pointing at me, I stumbled back, colliding with the bed frame. The air grew colder. The drawer slammed shut on its own, rattling the entire dresser. I froze, listening. The walls creaked not like wood under pressure, but like something inside them was shifting. The sound traveled along the length of the room, circling. The ceiling bulb flickered just once, and in that instant of half-darkness, I thought I saw something in the corner by the window. A shape, too tall and too still. When the light steadied, the corner was empty, but the curtains swayed even though the window was closed. I told myself I was tired, that moving had worn me thin, that the house's noises were old with settling. But when I lay down on the floor, trying to breathe through the silence, I heard it again, a whisper, not from outside, from the walls themselves. And though the words were muffled, I swear I understood them. Welcome home. The house changed after sunset. During the day, it was just old dusty corners, warped floorboards, wallpaper yellowed with time. But when the last light drained from the sky, it felt different. The air grew heavier, thick enough to taste. Each breath carried the faint tang of iron and mold. The walls no longer seemed like barriers, they pressed in, as if leaning closer, listening. I set a small lamp in the living room, trying to make the space feel warmer. The bulb glowed weakly, casting a trembling circle of light that never seemed to push back the darkness. Shadows stretched unnaturally long across the floor and bled into the wallpaper, warping the faded floral patterns into grotesque shapes. From one angle, the curling vines looked like antlers, from another, like staring eyes. I told myself it was just exhaustion, just imagination. But the sound that came next was real, a faint scratching dot. At first it was so soft I thought it was a branch outside brushing against the siding. But as I held my breath, the sound grew clearer, closer, not random, deliberate. It traced the outline of the room, dragging along the inside of the wall itself, slow, careful, like something pacing in the hollow space between plaster and wood. I stood, pulse hammering in my ears. The scratching circled me once, pausing behind the wall where I sat. Then it moved again, trailing toward the hallway. That was when I saw the mirror. It hung crooked above a warped cabinet at the end of the hall. A long rectangle framed in wood that looked black in the lamp's dim glow. My reflection stared back, pale and tired, eyes ringed in shadows. I tilted my head, hesitant. My reflection didn't move. It stayed still, staring, and then it blinked, not both eyes. Just one, a slow, deliberate blink, out of sync with me. I stumbled back, knocking the lamp. The bulb flickered, hissed, then died, leaving the room in suffocating dark. My flashlight lay in my bag by the wall. I scrambled for it, hands shaking. When I clicked it on, the beam was thin and weak, barely cutting through the shadows. I swept it across the room, heart pounding. For a moment, there was nothing, just dust and peeling paint. And then something rolled from beneath the dresser. It came to rest in the cone of my flashlight drowned. Wet, pale eye. Leaned closer, gagging. It was an eye, not a marble. Not a doll's glass eye. A real eye. Shriveled, cloudy, its iris faded to grey. The scratching returned, louder now, frantic. It raced through the walls, high to low, circling, darting, as though whatever was inside had grown impatient. The mirror trembled. The glass rippled faintly, warping my reflection until it stretched, bent, and blurred into a grin I couldn't make. I backed into the center of the room, the flashlight jerking in my hand. The beam caught the wallpaper again. The floral patterns seemed to writhe, vines twisting into horns, blossoms curling into staring eyes. A whisper slithered through the dark, low, wet, right behind my ear. The house remembers. That words sank into my chest like a weight. I spun, but the room was empty. Only shadows and the single, staring eye on the floor. The bulb above me flickered back to life on its own, buzzing faintly. Its light was weak, jaundiced, but it revealed something I hadn't noticed before. Colon scratches dot on the walls. Thin gouges etched into the plaster. Spiraling patterns that spread from the corners upward, curling like claws had carved them over years. Some of them overlapped, layered, as though different hands had made their mark at different times. My gaze landed on one near the mirror. At first it looked random, but the longer I stared, the clearer it became. A word, welcome. The letters were jagged, uneven, but they were there. And as I stared at them, the mirror's glass bulged outward, faintly, like something pressing its face against the other side. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every time I lay down, the house groaned and muttered as if it were whispering directly into the pillow. The radiator clicked in strange rhythms, like tapping fingers. The pipes hummed with something that sounded less like water and more like a breath. By midnight, I stopped trying. I lit a candle, clutching it like a talisman, and stepped into the hallway. The air was thick, humid, tasting faintly metallic, like breathing through damp cloth. My footsteps seemed too loud, yet swallowed almost instantly by the walls. Ahead, the crooked mirror loomed at the far end, its glass quivering faintly like disturbed water. I kept my eyes down, unwilling to see if my reflection would obey me tonight. The hallway felt longer than before. I counted 6 doors on either side, though I was sure there had only been 3 when I moved in. The walls seemed to lean closer, narrowing the passage, forcing me into a single line. I tried the nearest doorknob. It was cold, so cold it burned. When I pushed it open, the hinges screamed. The room beyond shouldn't have existed. Wallpaper peeled in strips, curling like tongues. The floor sagged, boards swollen and warped. In the corner, a crib rocked gently back and forth. No wind, no drafts, just steady movement. Like someone unseen leaned over it. I stepped closer, heart thundering, the candle trembling in my hand. On the floorboards lay something pale and small. I crouched. It was a tooth, human, a molar, jagged root still streaked with dried brown. I froze. The crib creaked again. The bedding shifted. For one breathless moment, I swore a shape pressed up from beneath the sheets, curled a dark, wet outline in the form of a child. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the candle, and slammed the door shut. But when I turned, the hallway wasn't the same. The doors had rearranged themselves. The spacing was wrong. The wallpaper bled with new patterns, spirals and crude symbols scratched deep into the plaster. Some were jagged, some circular, but all overlapped like dozens of desperate hands had carved them over years. I ran my hand over one of the spirals. The grooves were fresh. Dust crumbled against my fingers. Something sharp bit my skin. When I drew back, blood dotted my palm. The walls groaned in response. At the end of the hall, the mirror glimmered faintly. I could see myself in it, holding the candle. But behind me, in that warped reflection, stood something else, tall, crooked. Its shoulders hunched unnaturally high. Its head bent to one side, as though the neck had snapped and never healed. The face was lost in shadow, but I could feel it staring. I spun around. Nothing, just the hallway, the shifting doors, the walls tightening closer. When I looked back at the mirror, the glass fogged over as if from breath. Words scrawled slowly across the misted surface. Stay. The candle guttered, flame shrinking to a thin, desperate thread. The scratches on the walls seemed to move, curling into letters that overlapped into words. At first, nonsense, then clearer. Welcome back. My pulse roared in my ears. I staggered backward, my shoulders slamming into a door I hadn't noticed before. It opened on its own, hinges yawning wide. Inside, darkness pooled, thick and heavy. Something shifted in that blackness. A faint click of teeth. A dragging sound, as though nails traced the floor. I slammed it shut. The hallway stretched again, impossibly long. My candlelight barely reached the next door, though it had been close seconds ago. The air grew hotter, the smell of iron thick enough to choke. Then came the whisper. Not from behind me, not from the walls, from everywhere at once. The house remembers. My throat closed, and then another phrase. Softer, almost coaxing, but sharp enough to cut. You belong here. The mirror pulsed with light, faint like a heartbeat. I watched my reflection twitch, blink out of sync, then grin slowly, lips curling too wide. Behind it, the crooked silhouette leaned closer, breath fogging the glass again. The candle died. I stood in suffocating dark, the only light the pale glow leaking from the mirror, drawing me closer whether I wanted it or not. The house no longer whispered, groaned, rattled, and pulsed as though it had been holding its breath for years and finally decided to exhale. Dust rained from the ceiling in trembling waves. The floorboards buckled, rising and falling like ribs. The walls flexed, plaster cracking as if muscles pressed beneath. I staggered backward, but every door in the hallway slammed shut at once, sealing me in. The single flickering bulb overhead brightened, then dimmed until it glowed the color of dried blood, and on the floor, the fragments awaited me. The finger I had once found curled in a drawer, the eye that had blinked at me from the nightstand, the tooth that gleamed beside the crib. They hadn't stayed where I'd left them. They had crawled here, dragging themselves through the night, leaving faint streaks of brown-black behind them. Arranged perfectly in a triangle, they pulsed in rhythm with the house's groans. The walls shuddered. Scratches split open into glowing lines, forming symbols I didn't recognize, spirals folding into eyes, jagged shapes that twisted like antlers. The grooves smoked, releasing a smell like burning hair. I wanted to run, but my legs moved the other way. The house guided me forward, each step heavy, as though the floorboards sucked at my shoes. My arms trembled, lifting on their own, candle long gone, hands reaching out toward the fragments like I had rehearsed this moment my entire life. The finger twitched, the eye blinked, the tooth scraped against the wood, and then they knit themselves together in my hands. Sinew wound itself out of the air, slick and wet, threading through flesh and bone. My palm burned as invisible needles stitched the parts into something whole. A mouth, pale lips, cracked and splitting, stretched wide. Teeth, jagged, some human, some too sharp, too long. The eye rolled into the corner of its socket, then settled within the mouth's roof like a parasite. The finger curled out from the side as though sprouting into a tongue. It screamed, not a sound I could hear, but a vibration that rattled my bones, shook my lungs, made my heart seize. My knees buckled. I dropped it, but the mouth didn't fall. It clung to my hand like a leech, sucking warmth straight from my skin. The house shook harder, boards thudding in rhythm with the mouth's voiceless scream. The mirror at the end of the hallway pulsed, fissures spidering across its surface. Behind the cracks, eyes blossomed. Dozens, hundreds, opening one by one. Some were human, some were not. They all stared at me. Every guest leaves a piece behind, the chorus whispered from the walls. Voices layered over each other, children. Men, women, some laughing, some sobbing. I clawed at my hand, tearing skin as I tried to rip the mouth free. But it had fused, flesh twisting into mine. Veins threading together until I couldn't tell where I ended and it began. The walls bent inward, wallpaper bubbling, words searing through the plaster. Stay, stay, stay. The floor beneath me swelled and split. A hole yawned open, lined with teeth of jagged wood and nails. The boards closed again, but the rhythm of chewing remained, muffled and wet. I staggered toward the mirror, its glow now the only light in the house. My reflection grinned at me, lips torn, eyes dripping. The crooked figure loomed taller behind it, antlers sprouting from its broken head, shoulders rising and falling with each labored breath. I slammed my free hand against the glass. The reflection moved first. It gripped the inside of the mirror, pressing until its palms left bloody smears. The cracks widened. A black liquid seeped out, thick as tar, dripping onto the floor and sizzling where it landed. The smell of rot filled the air. The mouth in my hand convulsed. Its eye rolled upward, staring into mine. "You belong here," it mouthed silently. The house echoed the words. From the walls, from the ceiling, from beneath the floorboards. Thousands of voices, layered into one command. You belong. Here, the mirror split wide, shards folding outward like jagged teeth. My reflection reached through, arms wet with black tar, fingers gnarled into claws. It seized me, yanking me closer, closer, until the cracks pressed against my skin. The house shuddered in triumph. The bulb overhead burst, raining sparks. The wallpaper peeled away in sheets, revealing flesh beneath wet, glistening, breathing. The mirror screamed as one final fracture split it down the center. And in that instant, I saw everything. All the guests before me, their fragments scattered across decades. Eyes, teeth, fingers, bones, all stitched into the house itself. The walls weren't walls. They were bodies, fused together, groaning in endless hunger. The house didn't remember. The house collected Dot, and now it was collecting me. I don't remember leaving the house. One heartbeat, I was pressed against the mirror's cracked surface, feeling it splinter into my skin, the antlered reflection dragging me through. The next I was on my knees outside, grass damp beneath my palms, night air clawing at my lungs. The house stood in front of me, ordinary as any abandoned home might be. Crooked roof, darkened windows, paint stripped to bone. To any passerby, it was just another relic rotting at the edge of town. But I knew better. The silence was too thick, too careful. The house wasn't sleeping. It was listening. I staggered to my feet, hand pressed against my chest, heart hammering in a rhythm I didn't recognize. It wasn't my pulse anymore. It was the house's. And then I saw my palm. At first I thought it was just blood, torn skin from when I clawed at the mirror. But no, my flesh had knitted into something else entirely. A mouth stitched into my palm, lips sealed tight but quivering. A pale eye rolled just beneath the thin layer of skin, pushing upward as though trying to see the world through me. My veins pulsed dark, threading into it, feeding it. Every few seconds, I felt the faint scrape of its teeth gnawing the inside of my hand. I tried to pry it open. My fingers wouldn't obey. They trembled, locked stiff, as if the new mouth had taken command. The house didn't need me inside anymore. It had taken what it wanted, and it had left me marked. I stumbled down the street, every window black, every shadow watching. I didn't look back, but I could feel the house's gaze pressing against my spine, a weight heavier than the night itself. I thought distance would free me. It did. Days passed. I never went back, but the house came with me. The first time I heard it was in my apartment. Wallpaper, pale and new, no connection to that cursed place. Yet, as I sat in silence, I heard the same groan behind the walls, the shifting, the breathing. The house exhaled dust from the vents. The bulb above me flickered the exact shade of dried blood. I moved. Different city, different building. It followed. The mouth in my hand twitched whenever I entered a room. It whispered sometimes, lips barely parting. Not words, yet just the wet sound of hunger at night. I dream of the finger, the eye, the tooth all, the fragments I saw. Only now, they aren't scattered. They're whole, stitched together into bodies that writhe in the dark. And in the dream, they speak with my voice. Each morning, I wake to new marks on my skin, scratches spelling words I don't remember carving. Welcome back, stay, collect. I thought I'd escaped. But the house was never meant to trap me. It was meant to spread. Now I see it everywhere. Reflections that don't match. Mirrors fogging with words. Floorboards in other people's homes that creak the same rhythm. And always, in the corner of my vision, wallpaper peeling to reveal flesh. The house doesn't just remember, it follows. It grows, and soon, whether I want to or not, give it the rest of me. Because once you enter that house, you never truly leave.